Welcome to the Doghouse. Have a listen as we take a look at life, love, and art in all its forms. Here's your host, the Rock Dog, Andrew Davis.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I just feel like I've been inundated with about 20 new apps in the last 30 days. So finding the niche and the network and how it all works.
Yeah, me too. Zoom and this Anchor app and WhatsApp. Well, catch us up then. I think we last talked to you sometime last summer. I started this in June, so it's probably in and around there. So, and I know you were working out in Alberta, but with the coronavirus and COVID-19, catch us up. What's going on the last 6 months or so?
Yeah. So I feel for myself that I was very excited for 2020, just the fact that the numerology of it, it's the 2020 vision, or you think about the roaring 20s of the 1920s. And so I was really looking forward to this year. I'd been listening to a lot of stuff, podcasts and that around like the economy, and they were forecasting that there might be a downturn this year, a bit of a recession, because it does come in cycles. The last one was in 2008. But yeah, when I first got wind of the coronavirus, when it first was happening in Wuhan, China, like I kind of remember, and I've seen a lot of those kinds of like outbreak movies, and I understand biology because I studied it just into university. And I just remember seeing some of these videos of people hanging out there. In China, they have these tall buildings with lots of people living in these tiny spaces, and all these Chinese people are like hanging out their windows singing songs of prayer and togetherness, and that they're all in lockdown. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I'm going to keep an eye on this. Like, what is going on here? That's really quite scary. And wow. And then I didn't really hear much about it, but I kind of kept it on my radar. And yeah, so then it hit North America. So yeah, I was still business as usual, like January and February, back and forth to Alberta, still working in the oil sands, and still had my eyes on the prize, wanting to save to buy a place here in the Comox Valley. And then everything just kind of took a turn in March. So yeah, I had family that was overseas traveling, and they made it home kind of right before things started to really become apparent worldwide that, hey, we've got an outbreak here, and we're going to start closing the borders and flying people home. And, so I was really grateful that, like, my grandparents and that they all got home in time. And I was still out in Alberta, and, yeah, they started to implement some measures up there to keep everyone safe, as did all of the different nations. And it's been really interesting, actually, to see the rollout, like, worldwide. And then, yeah, so fast forward maybe a couple of sets, and we had the message that, yeah, we're going to be cutting production in half, and we're going to be laying a bunch of you guys off. So I got the phone call on April Fool's Day, which was kind of funny, but not funny.
Oh, unfortunately, it wasn't a joke, though.
No. But, for me, like, I've started and finished so many different things in life, or had abrupt endings and had to start over again, that for me, there was just so much kind of like grief going on in the world, that I could feel that on like a personal, spiritual level. And then, also people, just the unknown and the scary sort of like, how bad is this going to get, and like what's going on, what's the truth, and then we all start losing our jobs and being told to quarantine and stuff. So yeah, there's been quite like an emotional roller coaster, I think, that we've all kind of gone through. And like for me, the grief of kind of like letting go of the people that I loved, that I was working with. And it's like love is everywhere, and so for me, like, there was grief just from that personal loss, and everyone's feeling their grief and loss in different ways.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like having to let go of my monetary sort of moving up in the world kind of dreams, of like home ownership and having nice things and a secure, safe income, if you want to call it that. And also some of the relationships that I developed out there, because a lot of people don't live sort of a dualistic life where you're in camp for, years on end with a lot of the same people. So they become your family members. So there was definitely like a shock and a wave of grief and sadness for me around that, and just kind of realizing the opportunity that I now had with going home, right, and not having to go to work, and that our government actually stepped up to supply us all with enough money to, well, for us anyways, we live pretty minimalistic lives, so for us it's enough to get by for now. And yeah, so it's been 33 days of just being home now.
Boy.
Yeah.
You were talking about the government has kind of stepped up. Do you think they've done a good job? Do you think Canada as a whole has done a good job? And back here in BC, what do you think?
Well, from the eagle eye view, like if you were to really come at it from a perspective of the whole, I would have to say that I haven't been following it daily. In fact, I have tried to only pick and choose when I'm taking in information as far as like news and media from certain outlets. So I found like Bonnie Henry to be really quite thorough and on top of rolling out the what we should be and shouldn't be doing type thing. And I think that those who are immune compromised or, are older, that kind of thing, like have had to rely on others for being taken care of in some ways. I've seen a lot of my friends and family members like stepping up and sort of taking care of their neighbors and loved ones. And so that's been really beautiful. But yeah, so as far as Canada, like, again, I mean, there's going to be holes in everything. I think when you're like trying to just roll out, information and finances and everything, I think that for me, what they've done for my household and how, we were up to date on our taxes, we were up to date on all of that stuff. So it was fairly easy for me to just apply for EI. I was Kelsey qualified for the CERB. So we were just very fortunate that, we've filed all our paperwork and we're on top of things. So for us, we were able to just file it and it was there. So for those who maybe aren't on top of that stuff, or, I know that there has been a bit of a hole in the small business sector, and I did follow Gord Johns recently on a Zoom call with a lot of local small businesses and heard many of the stories. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't dismiss any possibility of outcome in the world ever. So I believe that there's a lot of truth in a lot of things, and it's difficult to see that there's certain people that are being forgotten in this, I think, and at least there are voices and there are people like Gord Johns, for example, who are advocating to ensure that everyone gets taken care of.
Yeah. I think overall they've done a good job. I think overall the world basically has done a good job. I mean, they're making this shit up as they go along. We have a worldwide pandemic. And especially with how globalized we are, a globalized economy, a globalized workforce, we're globalized connectivity through the internet and everything. Like, this is uncharted territory. So they did miss a lot of people, and I think that was to be expected. We've been all right, but they did miss a lot of people. But like I said, they're making the shit up as they go along. So I'll cut them a bit of slack.
Yeah, and I do see that they're like changing things as it goes, and like the provincial government of BC just rolled out $1,000 for every individual that qualifies as well this month. So you can go to the provincial government website and apply for that. So it's just, I mean, there's a lot of really challenging obstacles to overcome in a, like you said, in a globalized system. And then looking like, so yeah, internationally and then nationally and then provincially and then, like into your own communities. And for me, what it's really done is slowed everything down. And because we've been at home so much, I mean, we still go out to the grocery store. We still do all of our own things for ourselves. We have been hitting the trails and staying, healthy and active, because I don't think there's anything wrong with people going for a walk around their neighborhood or down through the parks that are open. And so we've been doing all of that and just really enjoying that change of pace, and it feels good to have some of those hierarchy of needs met to be able to actually withstand the emotional and physical and spiritual dissonance that can come from a global pandemic like this. There's a lot of people that are being affected, and like you said, we're connected through the web, and so we can actually see and feel and witness when our community members and friends are actually losing family members, and because of COVID. So, I mean, there's been a lot of death in the world. There's been a lot of like waking up to the system, the global system, and like you said, there's going to be mistakes made, and I think that's like the grander view is like how far we've come as people on the globe, and the systems that are basically, there to drive the economy forward and to make a small amount of people wealthy and the vast majority of people maybe not so much. So
Right.
Is this a time where the vast majority of people are now going like, wait a minute, I kind of like this change of pace, and, maybe the system is broken, and how can we actually change that? So,
Well, the system is clearly broken. I am a firm believer in a UBI. I think there should be a universal basic income.
mm-hmm.
I think that we should have a nationalized transit system with transit plans and transit goals leading to a greener economy. I think we need a Green New Deal. I think we need to get away from this capitalistic empire that we've built, because I think too many people are being forgotten. And I think over the last few years, I've been opening my eyes a lot more to my perceived injustices in the world, and I don't really like it. And I think we need to change. I think coming out of this pandemic, there has to be a change. And what we've shown is that we can do this. We can house the homeless. We can get drug addicts the help they need. We can make sure there's a UBI so people are able to continue their lives. We can get things like rent control and evictions overturned and things like that. People working from home that can work from home, right? A lot of the office workers, the 9-to-5 workers, they get up every day. They have to commute into where they work. They spend all day sitting in a big building, and then they got to commute home. So we've proven that these people can work from home. So why are we going to go back to what we were when what we're doing now during this pandemic is, I think, having a good effect on our social being, our social well-being, our mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like on top of that there is more of a unity consciousness, right? Like if consciousness is just the ability to be aware and present, and we're now looking at the whole and seeing those, people that are struggling with addictions and don't have housing, that sort of thing. Those are the basic bottom level. Like everyone needs to be housed and everyone needs to be fed. Like those should just be your two basic human rights. And the fact that we are so far advanced in so many other ways, and that has been going on, it just goes to show that we as a people need to elevate our level of consciousness and thinking about like oneness, and if they thrive, then we thrive, and if we all thrive, then we can live in a much more harmonized earth in this galaxy.
Well, there's no planet B, right? As they say. Or there might be, we just haven't found it yet.
I mean, I think that there's many, 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 many planets out there, but we have no way of getting there yet. So I think that, as much as we have all this outward technology, and I love what you said about a lot of us are getting to work from home, and I have heard a few people saying, like, I love living from home. I'm way more productive. I can take time out during my day to, like, do yoga, play the guitar, make a healthy meal, call family, and I don't even mind working extra long hours even into the evening if I feel called to do that.
Yep.
Right? And yeah, there's so many amazing, awesome, good things coming out of this, and I just wanted to touch on the grief part, because there is a lot of grief and there is a lot of fear, and those energies are really they're messy and they're dark and they're sad and they're lower vibration, and I fear that some people don't have the tools in their tool belt to rise out of that on their own, right? And they need more of like a fellowship connection or community, and so that's where that next level of need of like human connection and the hugs and the coming together. As we move into phase 2, I know that I was talking to my friend in the Netherlands today, and they're saying June 1st, there's going to be some changes where, the restaurants are going to open to a limited capacity, and you can now have gatherings, but of this many people and this sort of thing. So I think BC is going to roll that out, and Alberta's, I think, ahead of us with that too. But, I think some people during this bit of time have had to sort of check themselves and the unconscious behavioral patterns and things we took for granted, and maybe our addictions, and are faced with ourselves because we don't have all of these things to distract us, that we could just go out and go do.
What do you want to see the world come out of this? How would you, in a perfect Jessie world, what would you like to see?
I would like the people to realize that they actually hold the power, and that we actually don't have to go to work anymore for people if it's not like, I don't really want to work for money anymore. I want to work for love and bringing joy to people, and helping others that are in need, that feel like I light them up, and help them transform things that they're stuck on. I think that's really what this is all about. Being here on this planet this time is really just bettering ourselves, learning, growing food, like simple things that for the last few generations we have been sort of lied to or controlled and manipulated in a way through, subliminal messaging through commercial enterprise.
Yes.
And so, oh man, when I started realizing this, and I started waking up really hard around 7-8 years ago through some of my big losses and coming face to face with my shadow and seeing the things that like did not serve me, and some of the unconscious patterns that were like repeatedly showing up. And it was like so apparent that if I didn't turn into it and look at it and challenge it and make living amends and walk a more spiritual path, that I was never going to be the person that I wanted to be. And that integrity for me in my life is like the most important thing. So And I mean, we've talked before in the past on shows about integrity and making mistakes and learning from them. So at the end of the day, what I want to see people to do is like have forgiveness in your heart for everyone, even the ones that you might despise, and just wish them like a higher level of loving consciousness to come through them and to wake up out of this brainwashing, you know. And there's all kinds of people on the planet, right? And so, you know, I think that there's 7 billion people on the planet. We've got, you know, maybe a couple hundred billionaires. There's some that I really like. There's some that I question. There's some that I'm like, oh man, I'm like, we got to keep an eye on that guy, right? Because the monetary system has us in handcuffs, right? So it's like, if we want to change the world, then we need to change the monetary system, and that's just it, right? We need to either completely overthrow, which I don't know that that's going to happen right now, but it could happen in the future.
We have to tackle capitalism.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we have to we need to either make them work for us or they need to go away, one or the other. There's 400 people in the U.S. own almost $3 trillion in wealth.
That's right.
That those 400 people combined own more wealth than 60% of America. 400 people. There's almost 400 million people in the States. So
that's right.
It's astronomical. And I don't think a lot of people realize, when you hear millions and billions, how much more 1 billion is compared to 1 million. People think a million's a lot of money, but there's a lot of millions in a billion to get to a billion. And I think that we need to start making these guys and these corporations accountable. Netflix, for example, no tax. Jeff Bezos doesn't pay any income tax.
Yeah.
They predict by 2026 he's going to be a trillionaire. These guys can end it all. Guys like Bezos and Gates and Zuckerberg, they can end all this easily.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you're saying. I've seen that image online that was floating around a while ago, and it was like all of those major companies, like all the corporations, and then from that, all of their logos that go under the umbrella. And it was just like, holy smokes, I never knew that like Nestle owned like all these other companies as well, or like, yeah. And I mean, I think all these corporations need to be held accountable for everything. So, I mean, how they treat their employees, the pollutants that they're causing by using their products, the pollutants that are happening when their product ends up in a ditch because some kid is like lazy and not taught properly and just throws their bottle or whatever. And I'm not going to rip on the youth at all, because last year, as we saw, the biggest uprising in history was last year.
It's beautiful.
And so the people have been wanting a change, and here it is. So the way that we can either take our power back is just turning around and doing things differently. So that's what I'm saying about coming face to face with your shadow and looking in the mirror and stop going, well, it's everyone else's fault. It's the rich dude's fault. It's this fault, it's that fault, or whatever. Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are still consuming.
Right. We're the ones that have to make the conscious decision to go, I'm going to change my habits and what I do in order to invoke change in others.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to like really do the inner work. And, you know, my practice and my spiritual practice has deepened like 100 times through this last month and a bit, because for the last while I was going back and forth and taking lots and lots of planes. So I'll raise my hand and go, look guys, like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I actually worked out there. I took lots of planes last year. I was digging in the patch. You were consuming the gasoline that's at the pump. We're all in this together, you know? But coming out of that, like the forgiveness piece, like I've had to sit with myself and like, okay, like what can I actually do right now while I'm at home by myself that's going to change my reality. So here it is. I'm tuned in. I'm watching these doctors, these quantum physicists. They're breaking down the barriers of all of the science that we were taught in school, all the theories, the Einsteins and everything. And they're coming with this new science. And we used to think that our environment and what we grew up in and what we did outside of ourselves caused us to get sick, but it's actually not true. We can turn our genetic codes on and off by being present in our own healthy self every day. So we have the ability to go within and reprogram our unconscious self, which is 95% of who we are. It's picked up and learned at a young age. And by the time you're 35, your brain's fully developed and you are who you are. But that's not to say that that's stuck forever. And so I've been listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza a lot, bought some of his meditations, have a few of his books. My partner's been studying his teachings further than I have, and she's actually held beginner workshops for people to kind of like demystify what meditation is and why it's a power tool. And so I've been reading this book, and then Hal Elrod is another guy. He wrote The Morning Miracle, and one of my friends who is like a Tony Robbins coach had tea with me a little while ago, and he introduced me to this other book. So between these two teachings for the last month, I'd say about 90% of my days, we've been waking up really early, and I've been spending those early hours in the morning sitting in silence, connecting with the unified field, which is the all and the everything, the intelligence that brought us into being, and quieting my mind and just trying to get into the present moment. And and then the journaling and the mantras and just trying to take back the programming. You know, if we've all been programmed, and I made a point with my friend the other day of singing a tune. So if I said to you, Andrew, ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I'm loving it.
Right? So, yeah, like how funny, right? So we're actually programmed machines, and but we still have our own free will. And now that we have this knowledge, we can take back our own power. So then if I'm doing that every morning and you and I were like, I believe in, free energy. I believe that we should have like Green New Deal. I want to follow in the footsteps of like Germany and New Zealand and best new practice, sustainability strategies. Like, let's put this forward above, blue dot movement, like let's commit to, let's heal our Earth Mother and let's honor like our planet and our people and stop consuming without reciprocity. Like, what are we giving back to Mother Nature? What are we giving back to the fish and the cow and all of the animals that we just consume for our own pleasure? Like, you know what I mean? It's very greedy. And when you stop and really think about it at the core, you're like, wow, like life is so precious, and we've taken the divinity out of it, I think for a number of reasons. But if you can wrap your head around sitting in meditation and giving that whole thing a go and reading those two books, it will change your life. And if enough of us are sitting in that frequency, I believe we will actually just will it into being.
Mm-hmm. I spend a lot of time in my head, sometimes good, sometimes bad. It's kind of my form of meditation where I will talk myself out of whatever I'm feeling at that point in time. I'll talk myself through it, not out of it, but I'll talk myself through whatever I'm feeling inside at that point in time. Lightburn Productions. Are you going to bring that back? Are you going to do anything with it? I saw your Facebook page light up.
Yeah, I've been kind of like looking at all of my pages and kind of just reminiscing for myself because it's been 10 years. And a lot of these memories are popping up. And I truly believe that was my happiest time in life, was when I sort of first moved to the Comox Valley. It was still very small here. Wonderful, wonderful arts and weirdo community. And I mean weirdos in the greatest sense of like circus and theater and anything goes. And I really just felt like, okay, yeah, like this is home for me. And that I was still quite young. Like I think 27, 28, 29, 30 is super young.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, relatively speaking now, right? And so,
Well, compared to me at the time, you were young.
yeah, and even now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm only a couple years off 40, and to me it's like I've learned so freaking much in 10 years, and I'm just looking back at it going, you know, but those were I was lit up at that time. I love working with youth. I love, you know, coaching and mentoring artists and doing these tours and just getting to touch so many people, their hearts. And yeah, so that's my like just humbled, happy place, if I can kind of get back into that. So I am at the moment creating a program, which I'm not going to be releasing right away, but there is a program that I want to put together. And yeah, it's just interesting because I've gone to some of the biggest festivals and really enjoyed myself. And I had another talk with a musician friend of mine, Des Larson. He's also started his own podcast station. He's new into it. And he and I talked last week about, what do you think about, you know, all these festivals, and some of them might lose a lot of money and not be able to come back again. And a lot of the, like the vendors that rely on festivals, this is their like artistry. This is how they make their living. You know, this kind of, I don't want to say gypsy lifestyle, but I don't know, but being on the road, we'll call it nomadic.
Yep.
You know, a nomadic lifestyle, and being able to like take your craft with you, live minimally and walk upon the earth. And so I think there's a lot of people who have, this new culture that has arisen, and we're having a time out this year. And he wanted to ask me, like, how does that relate back to you and your festival losses? He's like, you know, asking me about that. And yeah, it was devastating to go through those losses at that time. And so, you know, I've lent myself to other shows. The thing, it's a lot of work.
Yep.
It's a lot of work. It's so much money. And I think people that attend, they have the wow factor. They have their transformational experience. It changes their life. People come from all over. It's a mecca. It's, you know, this amazing experience. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. There's a lot of layers to putting on festivals, or any concerts for that, you know, outdoors especially. There's just so much that goes into it. And I think maybe now even the people that were attending that didn't really understand that, might be witness to, like, the struggle that, like, the festival producing teams, I don't know. I would like to see people appreciate and have a little bit more gratitude for those events by not having them.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the producers and stuff, I just hope that the communities are able to look at it and go, this is something that we really value a lot, and we're willing to donate money selflessly to, because why should one or two or three or four or five people who put this on, and I mean for years probably didn't make anything other than maybe they were an artist and played, and so they took a little artist fee or they took a little production manager fee, but I mean, I don't know many producers that make more than a couple grand on a show realistically until like way years into it.
Yeah.
You're constantly upgrading your gear, and so anyway, Lightburn Productions, yes, 10 years. definitely Comox Valley, obviously my heart and soul. I definitely want to work with the youth, and when Music Fest happens again, I'll be right in there, and I'll probably come out to some Pride events with my girlfriend and support things that are near and dear to my heart. I don't know that I'm going to take on any big projects right away unless something presents itself. But I'm really into the podcasting as well. Like I really do like that we can communicate this way and globally and locally, but through, coaching and one-on-one. And so I really do feel like called to do a little bit of the Lightburn Productions thing and see, oh man, that lights me up and I love that so much. But I also really love just selflessly showing up for others who need whatever they need. People need different things at different times. So
I would like to actually teach this. People say podcasting, can you teach it? But I would like to teach more along the lines of coaching on proper, techniques, interviewing tips, things like that, but more in looking into who the person is. When I was a program director at the radio station and hiring talent and putting them on the air and trying to coach them and train them to become better, the one thing I always told them was just find who you are and put that on the radio, because that's what's going to come across is who you are, and people are going to appeal to you as a natural, real person. So I think it'd be fun. Maybe get some kids together and try to do some podcasting. We'll go back to Watchy and we'll fill that place.
Yeah, no, I'm like, yeah, no, yes. I'm really trying to be like careful of the words I choose too. They hold so much power. Like, absolutely, yes. That's excellent. We should team up. I know they have such a really awesome multimedia center there. Like, I'm blown away. I want to learn. Amazing. I want to learn all the things.
What Rob has done there is it staggers me. Like, he has a real working studio of anything, podcasting, film. It can all be done there, and it's free for youth to go and learn how to do this stuff, or learn the basics and then go off to Vancouver Film School or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, right? Like, right now is a good time for going within and sitting with yourself and just feeling into this new, here's the best advice that I could give anybody right now. And I have so much energy surging through me lately, Andrew. It's borderline. I have to be careful because I'm so stoked on life right now. And, I can't even sleep. I'm up creative till 12 at night, and then I'm getting up at 6:30 and starting my meditation and yoga and practices in the morning. So I'm absolutely so stoked on life, and I really want people to work on their limiting beliefs. You can have them when you're a kid, you can have them as an adult, but really sit with yourself, right? And ask yourself, like, what is a belief that I have about myself that is holding me back from doing the things that I love? And for me, it was always like, oh, yeah, they're not going to take me seriously because I'm young and I only have, this school and that. And, if there's one thing that I've learned at this point in my life is that when you fully commit to an idea of what it is that you truly want to experience in this life, there's absolutely nothing holding you back but you.
Yep. I learned that over the last year. Very much so with this podcast. This podcast has been a huge learning experience for me, looking deep inside myself. There was days where I had panic attacks before I went in, tried to convince myself not to go. Interviewed Libby Davies and had a massive panic attack before I went in. I had the same thoughts. Why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? Who the hell am I? But then I did the podcast, and then I started to get the feedback, and then I started to see some of the numbers that were coming back, and I thought, well, maybe people do want to listen to what I have to say.
I believe that if we can come from a place of we were all brought here from the Creator to have this life experience, then we are absolutely perfect in the world, and whatever lights us up is our gift back to source energy. You know, like I totally get it. I get the panic attacks, and I think, you know, when you've done enough work on yourself and you've looked at all of the things that you go, oh man, I wish I could have done this and that better. That's all you have to do is just keep trying to be better, you know, and cut yourself some slack because, yeah, like, of course people want to hear you. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone ultimately should want to take away something from everyone because everyone has their own story and we're all a part of the one great source, you know? So
Yes.
I just think if we could lay our guards down and just see that we're all equal. And it's funny because this got brought up just the other day, and a small group of us came together, and yeah, we kind of talked about how that's a thing. Like, we idolize people in our community or people we want to be friends with, and sometimes think that, oh, they're so cool or they're so talented, or, you know, why would they want to, you know, get to know me? And but yeah, you know, you get to know those people and they're just like the most kindest, loving, also have insecurities and stuff. And then, you know, so vulnerability, like and that's the thing for me, like, I don't really like surface conversations. I get really kind of just flustery, like, okay, like, like, I want to go either deep with you right now, or I want to go deep into nature right now or something, right. You know? So, yeah.
Small talk is a waste of time.
Yeah, right? Like, it is and it isn't, because there is the charming, endearing, funny, quirky comedy that can come from just kind of like bumping into somebody in the street. But yeah, like, but getting back to the feeling of like insecurity and anxiety, like, you know, people need to, and myself included, we need to figure out what works for us and what doesn't, right? And we all have our different traumas that create our shadow self and our darker side that we may have been afraid to show, like when we were young and kind of growing up. And, you know, for me, I struggled with that a lot, and I had a lot of anxiety, even though outwardly I could be kind of a chatty Cathy, because that was just like naturally who I was, but I was freaking out on the inside. And, you know, over the years, just like really trying to accept who I was and like love that shadow self, and just share with more people and family and friends that was something that I was working on, really helped. So if I could just bring it into the light and say, you know, like, this thing's still bothering me, like, you know, coming out when I was really young with my sexuality was really tough, and you know, it wasn't accepted. It was actually like made fun of, or there was violence or whatever. You know, as an example, I think people, even as adults, that can be that core wound and that shadow dark side that we don't really want to show people. And that just feeds our anxiety. So until we've sort of brought each of these skeletons out of our closet and dealt with them, it's hard for us to be like at the truest version of ourselves.
Yeah. Because life is a journey, not the end point. Or it is the journey, not the end point.
Right? And through the journey, it's actually a spiral, right?
Yeah.
And you keep kind of coming back around, but like the spiral gets bigger and you widen your circles, and you know, you can come back and look at something. And that's what I love about the cycles of like astrology and the sun and the moon, and just that's our clock, you know. And every year we have this beautiful birthday, which is our solar return, and you can start to see these cycles and kind of celebrate how far you've come. So now every year that I get older, I'm like, yes, like I made it to level 36, you know, and just like, I'm stoked to get older, and every gray hair that I'm getting right now and like, I don't know, wrinkle, I'm just like, yes, like that's just another, I've earned another, I just love
That's the way I look at it. I mean, I'm going to be 52 in September, but it means that I've been 52 trips around the sun. So
right. Yeah, it's kind of like, it just makes it kind of cute in a way too, right? Like,
yeah,
we're so lucky to have life, and when you lose people early in life and or family and stuff, it just makes you realize, and that's why, you know, the dark and the light, I guess I've been talking about a bit today, but the dark and the light, it's like when you're reminded by death that this life that you have right now is only for so long, it makes you want to live deeper and love harder.
Yeah. All right, hey, I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
It's been fantastic. You want to come on again? Maybe you and your girlfriend can come on and talk about life and...
Oh my gosh. Really? She would love that.
Really? Cool.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
You've been listening to The Doghouse with Andrew Davis.